A book that claims to have that secret formula. Formula G, scale your startup to a growth machine.
Catchy title, right? And the authors, Ajaya Kumar, M.H. Abuzaki, and Priya M. Nair, they've got some serious startup cred. The book promises this really practical, hands-on guide to, well, achieving hypergrowth. But, and I think you'll agree with me here, it's got to be more than just a formula, right? I mean, what about the people?
You're spot on. It's the human element. How people actually connect and organize within a company. That's often the make or break factor and something the Formula G actually hints at. And that's what we're really diving into today, that interplay between formal and informal organizations.
Okay, so unpack that for us. What exactly are we talking about when we say formal versus informal organizations?
So think about it this way. You've got your org chart, right? With your neatly defined departments, the teams, who reports to who, all that good stuff. That's your formal organization, the official structure. But then, almost like this hidden network, you have something else that develops organically. It's the alliances that are forged, over those late-night deadlines, those shared frustrations, whispered by the coffee machine. That's your informal organization.
So you're saying those water cooler alliances can actually impact a company's growth in a real way?
Absolutely, and Formula G even touches on this. They actually suggest that. These informal networks are where a lot of innovation comes from. In fact, they actually call it leveraging pockets of brilliance.
Pockets of brilliance, huh? I like that. But how does that actually play out in a real company setting?
Okay, so let's say you've got a team, and they're trying to solve this really complex problem. Now, on paper, they're separated by their job titles and what their roles are. But informally, what happens is they start brainstorming together, sharing different ways of doing things, workarounds. They might even start challenging each other's assumptions.
It's like they're bypassing all the official channels to actually make things happen.
Exactly. And Formula G points this out, emphasizing how vital this free flow of information can be for creative problem solving, making things more efficient.
So it's more than just about, feeling like you're part of the gang, right? These informal networks, they can actually have a real impact on a company's bottom line.
Oh, absolutely. And it goes beyond just efficiency, too. Think about it. When people feel like they belong, when they're really connected to the people they work with, they're going to be more invested in the company's success. More likely to put in extra effort, be more engaged, more productive overall. I mean, wouldn't you be more willing to go the extra mile if you felt like you were a part of something bigger than yourself, surrounded by people you trusted and respected?
Yeah, for sure. There's that sense of shared purpose we talked about. But let's be real. Work can be crazy stressful. Even when everyone's getting along, things can get tense, especially in those high-growth startup environments.
Oh, totally. And that's actually where I was surprised by Formula G. It recognizes that these informal groups, they can act as a kind of release valve for all that pressure.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that. How does that work exactly?
Well, think about it. You're probably more likely to let off steam, share what's bugging you with someone you trust, someone who gets it, someone who's right there with you in the trenches.
100%. It's like complaining to a friend about your boss versus like going straight to HR. You want support, not necessarily to file an official complaint.
Exactly. And the book makes this point, that having these informal channels to vent, it can be really healthy for a company's culture. It lets employees deal with stress, find support, and hopefully avoid burning out.
So instead of treating these informal interactions like something bad, Formula G is saying leaders should actually encourage them to a degree.
Up to a point, definitely. But it also acknowledges that, it's not always smooth sailing. There are potential downsides, too, and those are worth exploring.
All right, so you've got my attention. We've talked about these water cooler alliances being a good thing, helping companies become more innovative, building stronger teams, even helping employees handle stress. But, and there's got to be a but here, right?
Right, and this is where things get even more interesting. Formula G doesn't shy away from the potential downsides of these informal groups.
So how can things go south?
Well, imagine if the goals of those informal groups, they start to conflict with what the company's actually trying to achieve. Like that workaround we were talking about might be great for one team's speed, but not so great if it ends up causing chaos for everyone else down the line.
Or what if those water cooler chats, they basically just become a breeding ground for rumors? That can't be good for morale.
Exactly. And Formula G doesn't sugarcoat it. Unchecked negativity can really damage a company's culture.
Yeah.
They even have this one story, cautionary tale, about this tech startup where you had this informal group and they formed to support a new CEO, all good intentions, right? But they became really insular, resistant to any kind of change, and it really ended up hurting the company's growth in the long run.
It sounds like leadership plays a big role in all of this. So how involved should a leader be when it comes to these informal dynamics? Like, where's the line?
Formula G actually provides a really useful framework for this. They call it collaborative navigation. And it's all about finding that sweet spot between having control and giving employees freedom.
Collaborative navigation. Okay, I like that. So what does that look like in a real workplace?
It starts with awareness, right? Leaders have to recognize that these informal networks, they're there, whether they like it or not, and they can be really influential. Ignoring them, it's not a strategy.
So no more pretending those side conversations aren't happening.
Exactly. And then it's about building a culture of open communication, creating an environment where people feel comfortable speaking their minds, sharing concerns, even if what they're saying isn't like sunshine and rainbows.
And I'm guessing that requires a certain level of trust on both sides.
Absolutely. And that's where empathy comes in. Formula G reminds us that at the end of the day, we're all human, right? We all have our own needs, motivations. And sometimes those motivations, they might seem counterproductive at first glance, but there's always a reason behind them. Remember that story about the apple orchard and the shipping delays?
Oh, yeah, how could I forget that one? The workers who were slowing down production just so they could get a full day's pay.
Right. Now, on the surface, it seemed like they were just being difficult, right? But by actually trying to understand where they were coming from, acknowledging their humanity, the orchard managers were able to come up with a solution that worked for everyone.
It was a win-win, right? The workers were happy and those shipments went out on time.
Exactly. And that, I think, is the key takeaway from collaborative navigation. It's recognizing that scaling a business, it's not just about crunching numbers and following a formula. It's about bringing your people along on that journey, understanding what makes them tick, and finding ways to align their motivations with the company's goals.
So as much as we might like a good formula, it really seems like building a successful business, it's less about rigid equations and more about mastering the human equation.
100%, that's it, exactly. And that's not something you can just plug into a spreadsheet. It takes empathy, open communication, and a genuine willingness to really listen, learn, and adapt.
Definitely a lot to unpack there. Really interesting stuff for anyone who's trying to grow a company or frankly, anyone trying to navigate the modern workplace in general. We'll leave you with one final kind of provocative thought from Formula G. The authors ask what if instead of looking at these informal groups as something that needs to be like managed or controlled, we saw them as partners in growth. Something to think about, right? Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and remember, the most successful companies, they're usually the ones that value people just as much as profits.